Worthy by Jada Pinkett Smith, Part 2, Hollywood. Chapter 7, Promise of a Perfect World. What's up, Square? Pac begins as always and then bursts into that contagious giggle of his. The levity and big energy in his voice make me smile. Boy, what do you want? I just gotten home from rehearsal at the studio. I'm tired, have Rottweilers to feed, and I'm not in the mood for his nonsense. As usual, though, Pac couldn't care less about whether I'm tired. He's on a mission. Look, there's this movie I want us to do together called Menace to Society. What? Am I dreaming? I thought back to a few years earlier when I arrived in LA in the early summer of 1990. All I wanted to do was win, win, win. And I believed if I played the game right, it would deliver me the life of prosperity, peace, and happiness I had always wanted. That was the dream. Trying to make it as a queen pin hadn't offered me that dream, though the game had taught me a strong hustle. A hustle I brought to LA. There's no such thing as an overnight success. Everybody who grabs the spotlight probably looks like an overnight success because you ain't know them before they hit the scene. Behind each one of those stories is someone who was willing to suffer setbacks and put in the hard work, hoping for a little sprinkle of luck. The best talisman I had was my mother's belief in me. Without it, I don't think I would have been able to pursue an acting career with such confidence. But just like everyone else, I had to deal with the classic Hollywood catch 22. If you don't have any recent or current credits, you're stuck trying to get credits. You're stuck trying to get credits, which you can't get if you don't have any credits. How to overcome that? Your training, talent, skills, and commitment to hard work are all valuable assets for sure. Connections, as everyone will tell you, can be helpful, but you can't make you. But can't make you. A connection can't give you a career, but it can help open a door enough to get your foot in. And timing is crucial. There's one other asset that might seem to be a curse, but can turn out to be the ace up your sleeve. For me, that was my education from the University of the Bmore Streets. I had cultivated fearlessness and a no nonsense attitude. After all I had seen and been through, I knew any trials Hollywood had to offer would pale in comparison to the trials I had already withstood. However, it was sometimes a double edged sword, because some would say that I could come off as abrasive, distant, and aloof. I didn't seem approachable, which until now had worked as a beautiful defense mechanism and kept me safe. But here in Hollywood, it seemed as if I had a chip on my shoulder. I wasn't aware of this edge because that's just how we rode back on the East Coast. I also got a lot of pushback for being rough around the edges, whether it was my Baltimore accent or the fact that I wasn't your clean cut girl next door in my style. And oh, yeah, I was too hairy. On the East, hair was considered sexy. Hairy legs, arms, upper lip, even bushy eyebrows were celebrated where I was from. I once had a very famous black actor tell me at a pool party when he saw me in shorts, Jada, promise me that you'll never shave your legs. I remember thinking, gladly. With all the Hollywood nonsense and scrutiny that came my way, my edge helped me stay true to who I was and where I came from. And that so called chip on my shoulder was my refusal to lose myself in the very white Hollywood stand up of poise, dress, and attitude that was slowly but surely being pressed upon me. Black talent was in vogue, whereas blackness off screen was not. Often I heard the question, what are you mixed with? Excuse me? Is your mother white? No, she happens to be full blooded West Indian, I would answer proudly. Oh, that's it. The Indian in you. This casting director was trying to imply that to look as I did, I couldn't have been full blown African American heritage. And he assumed that the Indian in my mother's heritage meant Native American. I got to the point where I saw such comments as ignorant and ridiculous, but I could not believe how frequently I heard them. What got me was the constant look of disbelief whenever I replied that both my parents were simply black. Ringing in my ears all the time were my Aunt Karen's words about never speaking on the mixed blood anywhere in my bloodline. She emphasized that people will always try to use that influence in your background as an excuse for why you had any appeal quality at all, even if the one relative from another race was from 3 generations ago. They'll never want to give your blackness credit, Jada. Don't let them do that. Whenever the question arose at the time when I was knocking on doors hoping they would open for me, I thought of Aunt Karen. Once I began to enter these audition rooms, I would come across a lot of fake wolves posing as producers, casting directors, and such. The Hollywood flex was amusing, but there would be quite a few times when I let jokers know I ain't the one. Compared to the real wolves of Bmore, these show business jokers were just more like little puppies. Sometimes I got nervous because I always wanted to do well, but this wasn't life or death for me, like it was for some. I knew all too well what life and death looked like. I could keep everything in perspective and just ride. The hustle became fun and exciting. My real edge, I knew it was all a game. Los Angeles itself can be deceiving to the uninitiated. The palm trees, the balmy weather, and the slower daily tempo can trick you into thinking you are on holiday every day. But I learned quick that these LA streets were nothing to play with. I was still an avid skater, so it worked out well that both the first place I lived in Culver City and my next address on Comey Avenue off the corner of La Cienega and Venice gave me close proximity to World on Wheels, the skating rink I hit every chance I got. Other than LA was like a foreign country to me. Other than that, LA was like a foreign country to me. What confused me most were the colors and repping neighborhood things. I didn't understand what all that had to do with making money. The gangs didn't own the property they were dying and repping for. On the East Coast, street cliques hooked up to make money. A clique might rep an area of the city based on money made, not based on gang color. Clearly, I was out of my league, so I kept my nose clean of all that. But LA trouble had a way of finding me anyway. At home, you knew when you were in a neighborhood you should not be in. LA was different. You could be in a neighborhood that looked like a working class area with nice lawns and palm trees, and the next thing you know, you get got. In other words, robbed and carjacked. One night, driving home from World on Wheels with one of my homegirls, a packed little hoopty pulls up beside us. I see some dudes up against the window looking as if they created a new version of pop locking, ready to battle some East Coast B-boys. I start laughing and tell my girlfriend, look, they pop locking. My girlfriend looks up and her mood turns. Oh shit, she yells. They throwing signs. They about to jack us. We gotta go. I stepped on the gas of my Civic CRX so fast and hard, we sped down Venice all the way into Culver City until I made sure we lost them. That will not be my last run in with LA's unpredictable nature. For all the differences in LA, in Los Angeles, and Baltimore, I found my people. We love to frequent places like M&M's Soul Food or Silver Spoon. That couldn't be beat for Sunday breakfast. Then we prowled through the Slauson swap meet, which became my go-to, where I could shop for everything, even new woofers and stereo systems for my cars. I loved going to Leimert Park to join protests or to enjoy the outside markets. Not far from there were the Owls of Eso Juan Books, an iconic Black-owned bookstore that featured Black authors who focus on subject matters of interest to people of color. I found books there you would never find in chain bookstores. Not too far from my house on Comey Avenue over by Rodeo, On the side, as opposed to rodeos in Beverly Hills, I was out and about when the acquittal in the Rodney King trial was announced. I'll never forget how Black people poured into the streets, rioting and looting. The community was furious, fed up, tired of the system, constantly reiterating that a Black man beaten senseless by cops had no recourse under the law. We were tired of a system claiming that the Black community was not worthy of justice and fair treatment. The Rodney King beating represented injustices felt in every hood across America, whether you from the South, the East, North, or the West, whether you wore colors or Timbs. We all felt the pain and humiliation of entrenched dynamic protecting those who had no regard for Black life. My girlfriend Keisha was visiting me from Baltimore that day, and we took our frustration to the street. Within the chaos of the riots was a unified voice. Fuck this. You will hear us today. Youth plus anger plus passion plus frustration can rightfully equal impetuous acts. An, ex- an expression of anger, frustration, and the need to be heard. Many got caught up in the tide that render unintended consequences as we grabbed stuff out of local stores. At that point in my life, I definitely believed justice meant an eye for an eye. Maturity would teach me that's not always the case. The night of looting and burning down businesses destroyed resources we needed in our community, and we felt it. We knew that what happened to one of us happened to all of us. The saving grace was that in the midst of this chaos, there was a lot of love to be found in many of our homes, churches, and community centers as reminders of our worth. In the end, the tragedy was that not much changed to address the pain of that moment or to prevent the moment from happening again, or worse. The period from the late 1980s into the late 90s was truly prime time for young hopeful like me. That was when so many doors began to open for Black actors. Hollywood was finally gaining the confidence to invest in untapped Black potential, allowing for what I often call the golden years of Black Hollywood. If you were a Black male comedian, it was practically a given that you have the opportunity to star in your own sitcom. This, of course, opened doors for Black actresses, but it wasn't quite the promised land. Black laughter might have been hot, but Black drama lagged behind in terms of what got made. There were few opportunities to become the next Black male Streep. But what I really loved about this era was the sisterhood among Black women. A success from any of us created opportunity for all of us. I see Nia Long, Paula Jai Parker, Elise Neal, Holly Berry, Regina King, Tamala Jones, Tashina Arnold, Melinda Williams, Monica Calhoun, Nicole Ari Parker, Leela Roshan, Queen Latifah, and so many more on the audition circuit all the time. Nia Long was one of the first actresses I met going on auditions. We became friends and at some point even decided to try our hand at forming a singing group. Though we didn't end up following through with that, we cheered one another on in our busy endeavors. As time went on, we all became full fledged adults with very busy lives and only managed to catch quick hellos at Hollywood events. But to this day, every time we see one another, the love and sisterhood of that time remains among us all. When Holly became the first, and as yet only, Black woman to win a Best Actress Oscar for Monsters Ball, she generously acknowledged many of us and the support and belief we had for one another. I felt that her acknowledgement was a beautiful homage to that era. We all had our own superpowers, yet we had a healthy competition. We knew at some point we would each get our due in the way that was meant. There was no beef, it was all love, always. Early on, my mother came out to visit because she ran into, excuse me, ran into other mothers in the game who were managing their children. She suggested, Jada, maybe I should be your manager. This was not a good idea. The process seemed easy, and some of the mothers' managers I offered her guidance, but my hunch told me there was more to managing than my mom could imagine. Besides, Adrian was still struggling with addiction. With much love and gratitude, I told her that all the belief she invested in me would serve me well. But you got to really know this game to do that, Ma. I don't think that's a good idea. We went back and forth as she ran down the examples of the mothers who were managing their daughters, and all I could think was, I get it, but no. My instincts reminded me that the laws of supply and demand would work for me. Blackness was popping, with more and more Black writers and directors coming up, as were opportunities to tell the stories of our generation. Eddie Murphy had jumped from the stand up mic to TV star to movie stardom in comedic and action adventure roles, proving that Black entertainments were viable globally. Black content was booming, from The Fresh Prince of Bel Air, A Different World, Family Matters, and Living Color, Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Rock, Living Single, and Martin to movies from Black filmmakers like Spike Lee, John Singleton, Robert Townsend, Julie Dash, Leslie Harris, Ernest Dickerson, the Hughes brothers, and Gary Gray. All of this was happening at warp speed with a huge, beautiful cluster of Black talent. I felt welcome into a bustling, energized, extended family right out of the gate. In short, I wasn't looking for things not to work out. My future didn't hinge on all the barriers in front of me. My future hinged on the conviction that if I could get in front of the right people, those barriers could be overcome. For my first 3 months in LA, I juggled three jobs. My main gig at Music Plus, a record store near Pico in La Cienega, a second job as a temp for various businesses where I cheerfully answered phones, though I couldn't type worth the lick, and another job in a personal injury doctor's office where I filled out insurance claim forms that weren't entirely above board. In my free time, I enjoyed taking a trek up to West Hollywood to the Bodhi Tree, another independent bookstore and magical space on Melrose Avenue that sold a wide range of new age, spiritual, and self help type titles. In LA, there were so many worlds I could touch, so many different types of communities and subcultures. All I had to do was find my tribe. Pac was still in the Bay Area, and he checked up on me frequently. Every few weekends or so, I drive up to see him or he come to see me. At this point, he was becoming known with Digital Underground and had started to be featured on records like Same Song. Things were about to really get rolling for him, and he predicted they would for me too. Sure enough, within a matter of weeks, my mother's friend, who had let me stay with her, introduced me to her friend Daphne. She became one of my new LA homegirls. Daphne was dating Keenan Ivory Waynes and eventually went on to marry him. After defying the odds as an actor and stand up turned filmmaker with I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, Keenan broke all the rules again with his hit sketch comedy show In Living Color, which had debuted the month before I got to Los Angeles. His show not only became a hit, but was an audacious representation of diverse talent and creativity in Hollywood. He was so ahead of the curve, launching careers for everyone from Rosie Perez to Jim Carrey to his brother Damon Wayans. After Daphne brought me to one of Keenan's parties, I got to know him too. He soon became a mentor in the best sense of the word. At one of those parties, I boldly told Keenan, "You need to make me a fly girl." After all, I was a dance battle queen from Baltimore. Why wouldn't he want me to be part of the dance troupe on In Living Color? He chuckled. "Oh, really?" He continued with, "Keep doing what you're doing. You got something." Keenan had an eye for talent, and maybe he saw something in me from the start. This may be the reason he chose to step into my world and put his foot down at a critical point, and in a way that I didn't even realize was needed. The backstory to this incident was one I thought I left behind. One of my former associates was a Philly based heavy hitter in the drug game and part of a clique known as Junior Black Mafia. We'll call this dude JB. When I first met him, I was impressed by his calm, confident demeanor. My girlfriend Fawn and I met JB and a few of his homeboys at the Harbor Place Mall in Baltimore. In that period, JB was among the many hustlers from Philly, New York, and DC who would come through Baltimore, especially in the spring and summer. He had his eye on Fawn. However, Fawn didn't roll in those circles without me, so whenever he wanted to hang with Fawn, I came along. This was how JB and I became cool. At one point, he invited me and Fawn to Philly. We met him at a stash house that sticks out in my memory because when he asked, "You two want to go shopping?" we said yes. He directed me to the laundry room and said to grab whatever cash we needed from the dryer. When I opened the dryer door, I found a large black garbage bag filled of cash. Being nosy, I checked the washing machine next to it. Same thing. It was full of money too. Fawn and I decided to be conservative and only took 15 G's a piece. JB was a good friend to Fawn, but she always kept things platonic. That was just her steez. Fawn was smart to do that. She kept things simple without hurt feelings. Besides, dudes liked the challenge of her aloofness. She was not interested, and conquerors always loved the chase of the unconquerable. She was not interested, and conquerors always loved the chase of the unconquerable. After I left Baltimore, the government came down hard on the street gang. Unbeknownst to us, there were full-on stings happening all over, meant to take down some of the biggest operations of drug distribution on the East. Many dudes I knew were being arrested back to back, and JB was one of them. When I got home in the summer after college, I paged JB. The feds called back asking how I knew him. I answered fast. He didn't tell me that was his name. I know him as Harold Jackson. Made it up on the spot. I quickly explained I'd been away at college and had met this guy once at a party. Whether or not they believed me, I don't know. But as I hung up the phone, I felt my heart racing and was so sad. Damn, they got JB too. Not long after I arrived in LA, I received a call from JB, who had gotten my number from Fawn, and he asked for a favor. In short, he was going to send me some photos. He wanted me to change the dates on them and be willing to testify in court that he was in LA visiting me at the time of those dates. He obviously needed an alibi. JB was someone who had always had my back, and I had learned a lot from him. For everything he had done for me, my reaction was easy. No problem. A few days later, while I was kicking it with Daphne at Keenan's, he overheard me explaining to Daphne what I needed to do for JB. Keenan immediately piped up, "You cannot do that." Keenan usually had the most cool, laid back, you can't ruffle my feathers demeanor, but in this instant, he was adamant and wanted to make it very clear that I was about to put myself in a very bad position. "Jada," Keenan insisted, "you cannot go to court and testify about dates you changed on pictures. That's perjury. You will go to jail." Now, my 18-year-old naive ass had not thought about that. All I was thinking about was that JB was my homeboy who needed my help. If you ride hard for people when they are flying high, you ride for them harder when they are down and out. Pleading my case, I said. He asked, and I don't want. Keenan interrupted me to. Keenan interrupted and spoke to me with full authority. "Lying in court is perjury. You will go to jail." His point was that real friends would not ask you to jeopardize yourself that way. I knew he was right. As terrible as I felt, I had to tell JB that I couldn't do what he asked. Years later, though, I was able to do him a solid and help his family. I'm so thankful for Keenan. If he hadn't taken the time to talk some sense into my young, arrogant, thick skull, there's no telling where I would have landed. Although JB understood, I still felt this was betraying the code I knew. Being a ride or die was central to my worth. Maybe I needed to relearn the code. In the land of Hollywood, I was lucky to come across practical advice early on that made a difference for me, even if I didn't put it to use right away. At one of Keenan's bowling parties, celebrating the season wrap of In Living Color, I had brought a dude from Baltimore who had just been released from one of his stints in jail. In passing, Keenan introduced my friend and me to Eddie Murphy, who was there supporting Keenan. When we asked Eddie if we could take a picture with him, he obliged. As the night went on, Eddie waved me over to where he was standing and asked, "Who is that peanut head nigga you with?" I cracked up laughing. He came back fast with words to effect of, "No, really." I responded directly saying, "My boyfriend." "Him?" "Yes, him." Eddie smiled. Then he asked what I was drinking, which was an alcoholic beverage of some kind. He told me alcohol wasn't good for me. "What are you drinking?" I asked. "Water. My body is a temple." As we talked, I saw the truth of this idea in the brightness of his eyes, the vibrancy of his energy, and the smoothness and clarity of his skin. He was just shiny and full of life. I thought, no toxic substance in the body makes one vibrant. That was dope to me. Most of the time, you heard about big stars partying with all kinds of drug and alcohol. I was surprised by his get down. And you know what else I was surprised by? He was kind. Eddie and I were friends from then on. He gave me a nickname, Jada May. Of course, he would make me laugh my ass off, although he wasn't one of those comedy dudes who had to be on all the time. He was smart, thoughtful, and a deep thinker. Eddie gave advice if I asked, but mainly he gave me the sense that focus and intention would carry the day. Everybody thinks once you meet famous people that they should put you on. What I was learning was that if you heed the lessons successful people have to offer and stay on your game, the successful people around you will see your effort and want to give you assist. Nobody can do it for you, and nobody is truly inspired to help you in a real way if you are not willing to help yourself, nor should they. To be successful takes so much more than who you know. In nature, this harrowing process can be seen in the journey of baby turtles. Once they hatch on the beach, if you don't allow them to struggle to the water through the sand and predators, they have no chance to make it in the ocean. And yes, most of the turtles don't make it. They get eaten by the birds that are literally waiting for them to hatch, to swoop them up and devour them. But those that make it to the water and get to reach adulthood do so having had to earn their strength to survive and thrive. Hollywood is the same. When Eddie felt I had made it to the ocean and was charting my own course, and he witnessed that I could continue to make a way for myself, he offered me a grand opportunity. But until then, I kept nagging Keenan to make me a fly girl. Although that was never happening, he always had a new gem to offer. "You didn't come out here to be a dancer. You came out here to be an actress, right? Stay focused on that." He was also quick to tell me, "But don't do extra work. Too many people get stuck there." I'd heard from others that if you worked as an extra, that could get you noticed. Keenan disagreed. At this early stage of the game, when I was working my three jobs, I didn't even have an agent. Getting an agent was very difficult and very necessary. But again, convincing an agent to take on a newcomer was no easy task. Keenan explained, "It's not about the status of your agent, it's about how passionate your agent is on your behalf." He made it clear that if I signed with a big agency, it would be easy for me to get lost in the shuffle because they were too busy with their biggest clients. Find someone who is passionate about you. That's the person who will work hard for you, no matter where they are. All I asked of Keenan was, "Can I use your name?" He nodded with a smile. "Sure." It was almost as if Keenan's inner voice with that smile Was I see where she's going with this. Let's see what she does. I made it my mission to produce something from this nugget of courtesy he had given me. Wasting not a minute after scouring the yellow pages of the phone book and finding names of talent agents, I made the first of what I expected would be many phone calls to Nancy Rainford. Much to my shock, she answered the phone. I vivaciously introduced myself and without taking a breath added, and Keenan Ivory Waynes told me you are a great agent and he suggested I call you. Oh, really? How does he know me? Nancy responded, apparently flattered. I didn't ask. He just said you were a great agent and that I should call you. Nancy was in. I could tell from her tone. She asked me a few questions. I told her a little about myself and then she said, can you come meet me today? That very day, I went to meet her, and we were a match on sight. When I picked Nancy Rainford's name out of the phone book, I had no idea she was black, and that was a plus for me. She owned her talent agency, and she had another client who was on the rise, Michael Rappaport, who became a dope friend at the time, who gave me rides to a slew of auditions. Nancy Rainford was sent heaven sent. Keenan was right. Her passion for both me and Michael in the early days of her agency was worth its weight in gold. Nancy went with me to almost every audition. She had faith in me and wasn't concerned in the least about me being rough around the edges. She knew that would smooth out as I matured. Nancy was fierce, smart, and fearless. I loved that about her. I would often hang out in her very small office and watch how she conducted business over the phone. She carried the same kind of confidence I had. We knew what we were made of. We knew we had something special to offer, and you were the lucky one if you jumped on it now. In an experience that was not common for actors and actresses early in their careers, I had the opportunity to listen to how she negotiated deals for me and how she'd walk away if it was not panning out to her liking. Nancy would say no, basically, then hang up the phone confidently and look at me, predicting, don't worry, they'll call back in 20 minutes. She understood early that although lots of work was available for Black talent, the deal makers loved to lowball us. Nancy, in effect, taught me how to walk away from deals that didn't represent my worth. It's a lesson I've held on to throughout my career. More than that, she showed me how the game was played behind the curtain. Soon after I signed with Nancy, I booked my first job, a TV pilot for an ABC series called Moe's World, and the part of the teenage sister of a deceased boy who narrates the show and acts as a guardian angel to his family and friends. After 13 callbacks, I was rough around the edges and not the look they wanted, but I wore them down. I discovered that booking the pilot as my first gig on a major network was a godsend and rare. Getting Moe's World was my foot in the door in the best way. By no means was it a guarantee that I would have a lasting career in Hollywood, but it paved the way towards promising opportunities. My name spread quickly in the TV world, and I had great tape that demonstrated my talent. Moe's World was also how I became lasting friends with Dwayne Martin, who had a prominent role in the pilot. This was his first acting job after arriving from New York, where he had played with the Knicks. Dwayne became a big brother on day one, and we have championed each other ever since. As the University of the Be More Streets had taught me, there is such a thing as chasing the game up to a point, but also letting the game chase you. Both strategies can be powerful. You have to know the difference between being hungry and being desperate. You never want to be the latter. But I couldn't help being really excited when Nancy called to say that I had a meeting with a young writer director named John Singleton for a feature film being produced by Columbia. As soon as I heard the plot, my instincts told me that this movie, Boys in the Hood, was going to be very big. Not much stands out about how the meeting started other than the usual greeting and small talk. Then John sat down at his desk as I took a chair across from him and the casting director, who began to read the scene with me. As we read, I couldn't gauge what John was thinking. When I lifted my eyes to his after the reading was done, however, there was clearly a problem. Looking me dead in my eyes, John told me that East Coast accent, you need to lose it. Because if you don't, you're never going to make it in this business. Looking dead in his eyes, I told him quietly, we'll see. After that, we talked a little more. I thanked him for the opportunity and I bounced. When I left the audition, I felt instinctively that he was wrong. Yeah, I also understood where he was coming from. Deep down, I believed what I had to offer would overpower an accent because the one thing you can't buy or teach is energy. The postscript to the story is that John and I became fans of each other. Whenever I saw him, I'd tease him about his prediction. He'd say, you got rid of the accent, though. We both laugh, and I say, you got me there. In the meantime, I chose to stay focused on all that was working for me. I very quickly started to book guest star roles, one after the other, on shows like True Colors, Doogie Howser, MD, 21 Jump Street, and Cagney and Lacey, to name a few. If I didn't get the job, I was always on the hunt. As long as I was able to hunt, in my mind, I was winning. Every now and then, I'd hear feedback later with some form of, oh, we loved her, but how tall is she? That's what happened when I went to audition for a guest star role on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, then in its second season. Coming out of the casting office on that audition, I ran into, guess who? We'd never met before. Our exchange was hardly memorable. What's up? He asked with a cheerful grin. What's up? I asked in response, not giving him the time of day and kept moving. The next time I saw him, sometime later, was in Bullock's department store, where I'd gone shopping with my mom, who had come out to visit. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a tall, lanky, nice-looking guy trekking past me. He was wearing a backpack. My mom asked under her breath, "Isn't that Will Smith?" "Oh yeah," I said with a nod. Again, he had that cheerful bounce and the vibe that he didn't give a care in the world. I mean, he had a hit television show on the air. Life was good. My mom said, "Why can't you be with somebody nice like him?" "The Fresh Prince?" I exclaimed. He would teach me not to judge a book by its cover. In the spring of 1991, just short of my being in LA for a year, I auditioned for the recurring role of a 12-year-old on the TV show Blossom. When I went in for the audition, I showed up in a green onesie jumpsuit with a curly bunny tail on top of my head. No question, I looked like a straight up 12-year-old. When Nancy announced that I got in the role, I had second thoughts. Did I want to spend the next few years playing this role of a preteen? Nancy made it clear that the show was going to be huge and that a big break like this didn't happen often. People spend years out in LA before an opportunity like this comes along. I knew she was right, but something told me there was another opportunity coming. It was pure instinct, intuition. I could feel in the rooms how casting people and producers were responding to me, and my instinct told me to hold out. Taking a major risk, I said, I can't do it, Nancy. Nancy quietly checked with me one more time. Are you sure? And I was. She took a deep breath and released the offer, but she wasn't angry. She trusted my gut, and she had faith in what we were building. True to my instincts, only 2 weeks later, a new opportunity came along. It was the audition for the guest star role of a student who had contracted HIV on a different world. The show had been on for 3.5 seasons, and thanks to the stewardship of Debbie Allen, was unlike anything on television at the time. Originally, the show about student life at Hillman, a historically black college, had been conceived as a Cosby spinoff. It was a sitcom, but a bold departure from the standard fare, with Debbie overseeing a development of multifaceted characters, relationships, and storylines that reflected the concerns, social issues, and culture of Black college students and faculty. My intention was to go in and faithfully portray this student who had HIV and give a great reading. After I read for the role, Debbie seemed impressed, and we started talking. I immediately had to tell her that I couldn't believe I was sitting in front of Debbie Allen in person and that she was my only inspiration for believing I could have a multifaceted career. However, the words spilled out of me. I can't recall precisely, other than my letting her know she was the artist who had given me a blueprint for what was possible. As I excitedly acknowledged her, intent on showing her every bit of appreciation and all I could muster, I expressed what was in my heart. You are my biggest inspiration. Debbie smiled that beautiful maternal lioness smile of hers, saying, "Tell us a little something about yourself. Where are you from?" Not expecting that question at all, I seized the moment for the next 2 minutes, mentioning that I'd gone to Baltimore School for the Arts, not unlike the school on fame, where I studied acting, dance, and voice. I finished with much enthusiasm. I'm going to be the next Debbie Allen. Debbie cracked up laughing. She wanted to know more about me, so I told her my family history and how I got to LA. Debbie was intrigued and engaged. After I recounted the broad strokes of my life, Debbie paused and looked into my eyes as she spoke, thoughtfully saying, "We're going to give this role to someone else." I nodded. She went on, "I want you on this show as a series regular." "Are you serious?" I responded as calmly as I could. "Yes, baby. I want you on this show. I'm going to create a role for you based on your life." I thought I would cry, not because I'd just been told I was going to be on one of the hottest shows on television, starring next to one and only Jasmine Guy, but because my idol, the woman I had admired all my childhood, saw me. Debbie Allen felt my presence. She saw my promise, and she believed in me. What could feel more rewarding or make me feel more worthy than that? I felt seen by this incredible woman in a way I had never felt before. More than anything else, with this experience, I felt loved. There would never be another experience in an audition room that would make me feel that way again. And there has not been a day since I met Debbie Allen that she has not loved, supported, and cared for me no matter what. I love you, Debbie. Needless to say, I could barely speak. This was a career making moment like no other. The role of Lena James didn't exist before I walked into that room, and Lena James would catapult my career to the stratosphere. The kicker was, my painful past was the very thing that allowed me and my character to be relatable, emotionally meaningful to audiences, and, to many, lovable for the next 2.5 seasons. When keeping it real costs you. Fat Joe on Red Table Talk 2022. Whenever we look at the place where we once were and recall how we made the leap to the places where we traveled next, we're given a chance to observe all the times in our lives when certain codes, keeping it real, for example, cost us or could have cost us. Looking back on the jump I made from the Be More streets to the fast lane of Hollywood, I was able to reflect with gratitude on the ways I was willing to change in order to take my life on a different trajectory. The hard part is unlearning old codes and following through with the new ones. The unwillingness to change our codes is that very thing that can keep us stuck, keeping us from the insights and tools needed to enter a new territory of life. As challenging as it can be to change our codes, it can be just as challenging for those who have been by our side to understand why the change must happen. The big blow for a lot of us comes from realizing that not everyone gets to go on the next part of our journey. and that can hurt badly. In straddling two worlds, we may question our loyalties and see ourselves as frauds for not being able to uphold the very code that helped us survive. Most of us genuinely want to take everyone with us. Some are ready for the new codes, many aren't. But we can honor the past and never forget where we began without sacrificing the glory that is ours to claim, a glory we all deserve. Can you identify a few codes in your life that have been hard to let go? Can you see how holding on to old codes may be keeping you stuck? Try on a new code for size, one that allows you to continue to be real without the cost. Chapter 8, Living the Dream. Are we going to the club or what? Was how I nudged my homegirl MC Light one Saturday night. The two of us had met when I was a presenter at an award ceremony for Act So, a New York based foundation that provides awards to students in the arts and sciences. When I saw that Light was part of the program, I felt like a dream had come true. Talk about one of the most unique and distant voices in the game. She was my female rap idol, and she better be glad I can't rap a lick because I would have tried to steal her whole steez. When I arrived at the venue, I'd immediately gone to find her backstage, where she was sitting in a makeup chair. I was so excited that she may have felt the need for extra security. I unabashedly introduced myself and told her how much her music meant to me and how much respect I have for her and what she did for women in rap. Light was the first female rapper to release a full length rap album, 1988's Light as a Rock, and by the early 1990s was on her way to becoming an icon. Plus, she was down to earth and gracious, everything I had imagined her to be. From that moment, we began a friendship that grew into a beautiful sisterhood. She became one of my few close girlfriends who will witness me at my best and at my worst and love me all the same. In those days, I could seriously drink a lot of folks under the table and still be on my feet. It was the Pinket in me. Light was often at my side on those occasions when I was straight wildin'. Although she partied hard in her own right, she always maintained the wherewithal to make sure I didn't get in too much trouble. On this Saturday night, before we even went out, I'd already downed damn near a full bottle of red wine, her beverage of choice, smoked enough weed to almost pass out, and then taken a tab of X. Light looked at me in my Lena James-esque attire, basically eclectic streetwear, and responded to my slurred question by saying, "Yeah, let's go." Before we left, I took a shot of Cavassier to top it off. Brown liquor in particular usually became the gateway to my more aggressive dark side, although that night I think it was the mixture of several mind altering substances that got me going. The whole LA club culture at this time was whack, as in boring. Other than the gay clubs, most of the well known clubs didn't have good music, and most of the people were on the dance floor to be seen and not really dance. But now and then, a hot DJ might come through and take over an underground club or restaurant bar, and the word would get out. Sometimes a lively crowd would actually show up. Once we got to the club, I headed straight for the dance floor to cut loose, doing my thing and bumping into whoever was in my way. "Hey, watch it!" More than a few people barked at me. "Fuck you," was all I had to say. "What did you say?" I said, "Fuck you. I'm dancing. You don't like it? Move." That brown liquor had me mean and obnoxious, and I liked it. Light knew when to pull my coattail, though. She was right at my side, leaning into my ear. "Okay, little lady, it's time to go." "I'm not ready to go." "I bet," she chuckled and politely grabbed me by the arm like we were about to square dance, and we do-si-doed out the spot. I was just warming up, but oh well. Light poured me into the car with another friend of ours and took me home. All the way to my place, I continued talking shit, laughing, joking, and just being the usual raucous mess I am when I get fucked up. Light got me into my house and up the stairs where she made sure I was okay. She never felt the need to give me a lecture. Instead, she was best at holding space, and I could tell that she was thinking through her silence how she listened, offering looks that conveyed subtle approval or subtle disapproval. That quiet way of keeping me grounded has always been far more potent and influence than a talking to. There were times when her looks would speak volumes. Hey, can we have a good time? But why do you have to be so reckless? At this point, not only did I not have the answer, but I couldn't see how my excessive destructive behavior was a red flag. There was a void inside me that I just couldn't feel, but also refused to acknowledge. Why would I? I was supposed to be happy, and people who achieve that I had in a very short amount of time are supposed to be happy people. I was reminded of that on a daily basis in a city that offers you, with hard work, a happily ever after. After I joined the cast of A Different World, a lot of positive changes happened quickly. For instance, once I knew where my there was going to be a steady paycheck and a good one at that, I was able to leave the place on Comey Avenue, which had to happen since my goddaughter and her mother who lived with me at the time were almost carjacked in my neighborhood. I moved to a town home in the hills of Studio City, walking distance to Universal Studios and less than 10 minutes from Radford Studios where the show was filmed. At age 19, though I was making good money legally too, nothing was ever guaranteed. And rather than spend it all on lavish decor, cars, and jewelry, I kept my life in my new place simple and modest. Old habits, like being on the low, don't die easy. The rent was reasonable for this sizable three-bedroom, two-story townhouse with a garage and a two-car carport, not to mention a large back studio and spacious backyard. There was a beautiful stained glass window at the top of the front door and an earthy, rustic feel with lots of wood throughout. My favorite feature was not one but two wood burning fireplaces, one in the living room and one in my bedroom, which had been a childhood dream. I didn't know nobody with a fireplace in their bedroom, and that meant I had made it. Whenever friends came to town to visit, Pod, Keisha, and later Mia and Fawn, and I ushered them in and invited them to sit on my blue velvet sofa in the living room with its cream colored carpet. I felt like I was the queen of my queendom. It felt fulfilling to share my success with the people I loved. Every friend who came to visit was happy for me and made sure to claim their guest bedroom. The only issue for my friend was that the place was haunted. Somebody sat on my bed last night while I was sleeping, but no one was there. Or I heard knocking on the bathroom door when I was in there, but when I said, "Who is it?" nobody responded. Or, "I can't sleep in here. Somebody's something's funky going on. I gotta go to a hotel." My invisible housemate didn't bother me, but they did their best to make overnight guests feel quite uncomfortable. The whole vibe of my new stomping grounds was energizing. Living right off Ventura Boulevard, wherever I went, I run up incomers from all levels of the energy. It felt so good to experience a level of prosperity among fellow dreamers, knowing we were able to pay our bills from sharing our talents. In a world where young Black artists were at one time invisible, it felt as if we were on our way to the promised land, and I experienced it alongside the cast and crew of a predominantly Black production on A Different World. At work, there was a family atmosphere. I could not have asked for a more supportive group of people to have in my side as I came into my own. There were Kadeem Hardison and Jasmine Guy, always in my corner, both like older siblings looking out for the young wild one. I actually first met Kadeem through Dwayne Martin. They were tight. So Kadeem and I became fast friends. Jazz was just a down ass chick, a girl's girl who was pretty, funny, super smart, and didn't take no shit. My kind of lady. Daryl Bell, Karen Molina White, Asia Sanders, Don Lewis, Glenn Turman, Charnel Brown, Bumper Robertson, Patrick Malone, and Lou Myers were phenomenal castmates. I was blessed to be thrown into the mix of such a superior bunch for my first television show. Cree Summer, Freddie, was a big influence in my understanding of feminism relevant to Black women in a movement portrayed largely through a white female lens. Highly intelligent with a razor sharp wit, Cree put me on the books and social justice movements around LA. She also introduced me to a vegetarian lifestyle, something I embraced enough to give up my fast food habits. Both Cree and author activist Bell Hooks, who also became a friend and mentor in my early years, expanded my understanding of racial and gender politics in America, and especially in Hollywood. Funny, sweet, and sharp, Bell was a provocative thinker and writer and constantly reminding me that success was to be used to help the greater good. Building on the foundation set by my grandmother and BIPOC, Cree and Bell further ignited my desire to take activism seriously. That's when the dream seemed more meaningful. Knowing my success opened doors to opportunities for me to uplift others, especially Black women and the Black community at large. Another fellow activist on the show was Daryl M. Bell, who played the character Ron. Super intelligent with a memory like an elephant. Daryl never let me forget how I convinced him to travel with me to Baltimore to speak to Black youth about the value of education and the opportunities that come from it. He was so gracious and giving of his time, helping connect his own entrepreneurial journey to the message we were sharing. Daryl and I went on to be nominated for an NAACP Image Award for our focus on youth empowerment. When I spoke to kids who reminded me of myself at their age, I understood the blinders that come along with not being able to see life beyond your immediate experience. Education allows you to see there are dreams you don't even know about. I became passionate about helping to create educational opportunities for those behind bars, making visits to juvenile detention centers and women's prisons in several different states. My early efforts included building libraries in underprivileged schools in Baltimore and Los Angeles. I had by no means been an academic star growing up, but books had given me a lasting lifeline. My path crossed with those of other passionate dream seekers who were deeply inspirational to me, one of whom had risked his life to come to this country from his native Mexico so he could have a shot at the American dream. I met him shortly after his arrival when I needed assistance with some Rottweilers I was fostering. I'd inherited two adult Rots and their puppies, helping out a friend in a tight squeeze. That friend sent me to this uniquely gifted dog whisperer for guidance in how to care for dogs. Caesar, only a couple years older than I was, had a center in East LA where would use his gifts to train and rehabilitate canines. He hardly spoke English, and his commands for Rots were in German. I had to navigate his broken English and learn German commands in order to work with my dogs. Later, when I found myself with four male Rottweilers, Caesar was about to make me a full fledged leader of my first pack. Whenever my dogs and I would go see him at his facility, folks would tell me to stay away from the predominantly Hispanic area because of the violent conflicts between Blacks and Mexicans. Coming from the East, I didn't have that experience, and the LA street politics weren't going to dissuade me. Caesar taught me that strong breeds like Rots need purpose, respect, and love, as much as humans do, and don't respond to words without the energy to match. You can't fool dogs, was his way of putting it. He taught me how to earn the respect of my pack. Caesar Milan, long before he was a household name, often talked to me about his dreams of sharing his knowledge with the masses, opening a bigger facility where people from all over the world could bring their dogs to be trained, and eventually becoming an author and television star. His passion and confidence made us kindred spirits. There was no ceiling to his dreams. He had the drive, talent, and the it factor to win. But there was one problem. You're going to have to learn English if you want to reach the masses, Caesar. He nodded in full agreement. How about I pay for a tutor for a whole year? As luck will have it, my former assistant was once an English teacher in Kuwait. The two got to work right away, and Caesar proved to be a determined student as he was a teacher. Caesar and I were on the same trajectory. Iron sharpens iron. I admired Caesar's hustle, and in moments of self doubt, his drive sparked mine and helped me keep dreaming and keep going, even when I didn't feel like it. The mentality for me was if you work hard, then you get to play as hard as you want. Play hard was my real deal mantra. And it wasn't just drinking and getting fucked up, it was also men. Child, the dudes were abundant everywhere. I was young, uninhibited, and bold. Because of my success, having a lot of eyes on me, I felt entitled to reap the benefits. I had tried my hand at committed relationships, but at this point, I had decided to forfeit getting tied down. After all, the world was my oyster. Why would I give up this state of freedom, exploration, and fun in the golden hour of my youth? There were all flavors and varieties. I did not discriminate when it came to men. Besides, didn't believe that one dude could have all the qualities I really was looking for. So, I resorted to my Frankenstein approach, compiling a composite picture of my ideal man. One dude would be the intellect and talk big ideas. Another was the artist who was in touch with his feelings. There was the funny guy who made me laugh. Then there was the roughneck bad boy. I always got to keep one of them. There was also always in the bad guy who, hands down, every time would be satisfaction guaranteed. The unfortunate irony is that while most of my relationships with the other guys were platonic, I preferred spending time with them as opposed to the in the bed guy who was strictly for late night calls. Was it unusual for me to come from a dinner date with one dude and sitting in my lonely silence, pick up the phone and make a call? No. Hey, what you doing? Sleeping. It's 2 a.m. You want some company? You can't keep calling me wanting to come over here late at night. You need to call me so we can go to the movies or something. Are you kidding me? Fine, I say. We'll go to the movies. Can I come over now? You good? When it became clear that I wasn't into commitment, something interesting happened. The guys who were normally cool with the no strings attached situation all of a sudden felt the need to tie me down. My immaturity led me to assume that most dudes would be relieved with the no strings attached get down. We could simply enjoy each other and keep it moving. Very rarely was that the case. This was a small revelation about the notion that men don't feel and the BS that they have no need for connection. I found that the players were the most in need of connection and were simply terrified of surrendering to emotional intimacy, just like me. Sex, for me, was a distraction from having to look at my genuine need to be held, have connection, and feel loved. It fed the appetite of the little girl who hadn't had enough of parental affection and attention. That dance became addictive. The feeling of entitlement that I should feel good all the time was a setup because it could never be satisfied. Gimme, more makes you greedy and it confuses what it is you really want. We usually talk about external addictions, drugs, and alcohol, but rarely about internal addictions of the heart. These get mistaken for love, admiration, and connection. Often it's just lust, and that can further the lie that you are having your happily ever after. Now, there have always been rumors that I'm gay, that I like women. Maybe that has something to do with clubs where I hung out, like the Catch, one of the leading LGBTQ plus spots in LA. At this time, they had nights for getting up and doing lip syncs, and where I myself on several occasions got up on stage and lip synced to all kinds of songs. I killed Madonna's Vogue. there one night. The truth is that during those early years of exploration in Hollywood, I had a few sexual experiences with women, only to realize that when it comes to sex, I love men. Still, I cherish the beauty of women inside and out, and I have never stopped being infatuated and in awe of women of all ages, sizes, and colors. My belief is women are the most amazing creatures on the planet, and I hold reverence for women through my friendships. What this season of my life taught me is that every woman should have the right and the freedom to explore and embrace her sexuality unapologetically by her own definition. Sadly, many haven't. In years to come, I find it disheartening how many adult women I knew had never had orgasms. This phase of let's just have fun with men was ultimately short lived. I liked the excitement, but I only got a temporary high. Eventually, the addictive chase got to me. Now I never consider myself an addict of any kind, but that's just a classic case of denial. There was one person on my neck at times about my lifestyle, and his name was Tupac Amaru Shakur. And imagine he was concerned about my lifestyle. Whenever Pac got in some mess, which was often, I would get a call from his mother, his brother, Mo Preem, or even him. Likewise, Pac would go out of his way to check on me, especially if he heard I was dealing with some fool, which was often. You know that nigga ain't shit. Pac, you don't even know him. Have you ever spent time with him? I don't have to know him. Every nigga I know ain't shit. What? You actually think niggas wanna love you? Hell no. These niggas just wanna fuck you. Pac, get off my phone with this shit. Alright, I'm telling you, you better leave these buster ass niggas alone. And he finished his lecture. He laughed, that beautiful, goofy ass laugh of his. Ironically, Pac was always falling in love with somebody, and I never complained. As long as he was happy, I was happy. But when we be sitting up in my living room and he used the occasion to get up on his soapbox and give me a sermon about this good girls and bad girls, bitches and hoes philosophy things got heated. What are you trying to say, Pac? That there are women who deserve respect and those who don't? Do women hurt any less than men? We gotta understand and be cool when y'all act a fool, but we don't deserve the same? You need to chill with calling women bitches. Pac countered with his usual, I'm not talking about you or none of your friends when I'm talking about bitches. Or am I? Is there something I don't know? I got mad respect for women who have mad respect for themselves. But if you a hoe, I'm gonna treat you like one. That got me to my feet. Generalizing and disrespecting women in that way is dangerous. I was just warming up. That's why I can't understand how black men can't see that they are oppressing and demonizing black women in the same way they've been oppressed and demonized by racist white people. Y'all act like we are not a part of the same struggle. It's stupid. Then be mad at the white man for my condition. Be mad at that because they stole my and so on and so on. We've been having these arguments over the years about the ways black men justify mistreating black women. Although the virgin hoe trope was common throughout the male kingdom, it was blaring through rap music with a poisonous pervasiveness in our community and eventually the world. In time, after many arguments, I will have the epiphany that Pac and I were actually arguing about the right to feel loved. We thought we were arguing about the semantics of how men and women disrespect each other, but underneath that was his point that black men deserve love, and not just because they're famous and got money. My point was that black women deserve love even if they don't live up to the idealized vision imposed on them. This was made more intense because we were both confronting these themes and a lifestyle that told us we shouldn't be loved all the time and yet weren't. Fame might get you company, but it ain't always good company, and it's certainly not real love or real respect. So, misogyny and objectifying women in rap were complicating that we all truly desired to be respected and loved and to feel worthy. This was a point I tried to make publicly when BET invited me to be a part of a group on air to talk about current events and our representation in media. On that panel was Easy E, NWA, aka Eric Wright, whom I had never met. As soon as I saw that Easy was going to be part of the conversation, I made my mind that I would find a way to address misogyny in rap with him directly, given the popularity of NWA and their music, starting in the late 1980s with Straight Outta Compton. Mind you, I love me some NWA, but how they referred to women in their music I found offensive. Once I had the opportunity to address Easy after the moderator asked me what I felt about his lyrics, I spoke my piece. I met him today. I would have thought that he was a woman hater because of his music that he writes. I added that because Eric owned his own record company, he had the ability to make a change starting from within his community to uplift us. My point was, when I listen to his music, I want to feel good about myself. I want to feel good about my people. Nobody jumped in, so I went on. Eric, you have the power to do that, you know. He coolly shifted in his seat as the moderator pressed him to describe how he was going to respond. I do say nice things, he began. To me, I interrupted. How does that change the impact of calling women bitches and objectifying us? Other black women felt as I did. Me being a young sister and wanting to feel good about myself. Now, come on. I had put him on notice. After the show was over, Eric approached me to say he did a lot for his community, adding that he was putting on a carnival for kids in need. He asked, would you make an appearance? I took a beat. Frankly, I didn't believe him. However, I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt and said, sure. I have to admit, I was impressed. We kept the dialogue going about making change in the community and about assisting the youth, and a dope friendship was born. Easy's real passion and focus was educating young people about business and entrepreneurship. He taught me a lot about the importance of ownership of one's artistic property. That was the change he was mostly interested in, artists owning their art, no matter what it was. In fact, when I gave him a folder of some of my poetry, which included the artwork of my ex-boyfriend John to accompany it, Easy had an entrepreneurial idea. He was very complimentary and told me, publish your poetry and record it as spoken word to music. Sell the CD with the book. Own it. All of it. This was the early 1990s when almost no one was doing things like this. He was ahead of his time. He was a unique character. Sometimes when he stopped by and I wasn't home, he would leave a note written backward that you could read only in the mirror. When he paged me, he placed the numbers together in a unique way that created words. His dry sense of humor was like no one else's, and he could also be very, very silly. It didn't surprise me that he enjoyed kicking it with Keisha, who knew how to make him laugh. I'm sorry about the background noise, y'all. Every time I try to do some, child, every time. Um, let's see. It didn't surprise me that he enjoyed kicking it with Keisha, who knew how to make him laugh. She teased him mercilessly about his jerry curl and how he needed to cut his hair. Once she went further, gathering his hair up off his face into a rubber band, insisting, see, don't you like that better instead of having all them wannabe curls in your face? Then Keach laughed her bottom belly infectious laugh while Eric stared in the mirror, shaking his head. In my heart, I believe that Eric knew he was sick during our friendship. I do not know this to be fact. I just feel it. Whenever we saw each other, it seemed he had a cold that would never leave. I comment saying, you still got that runny nose? Or you need to go to the doctor and check that out, E. He flat out ignored me or quickly changed the subject. Maybe I should have pressed the issue. Instead, I shook off my concern, figuring it was probably just symptoms of stress, considering all that was going on in his life post NWA. He was pretty brokenhearted about how business was going down with Suge Knight, the former bodyguard turned promoter, artist manager, and co founder of Death Row Records, who, as time would tell, will become a symbol of violent chaos to be avoided. Easy always seemed like he had a gray cloud over his head, as if he was heavy with sadness. It was my naivety I found it hard to witness how huge success could come with weighty, complicated problems and didn't necessarily equate to a happy ever after. There's a saying, we ain't in Kansas no more, or something like that. I knew this to be true whenever I went home to Baltimore. Hold on, y'all. Let's just power through the rest of this. In this, I again apologize. Um, I knew this to be true whenever I went home to Baltimore, aka Kansas, to visit. I felt like a stranger in a place that was once so familiar. No longer. Understandably, it was very difficult for people to fathom the reality I was living. They assumed, as I once had, that with fame and fortune, all ears are all ills are cured. Shocker. I had changed, but my ills had not. It would take me a lot of years to unravel the difference between having confidence in some areas of my life, performing, making money, and thriving in survival mode, and having a healthy sense of self worth. Confidence can help build self worth, but it can't substitute for love. All right. When you don't know this, you are in a constant storm of having to prove yourself. You tell yourself, if I just get a little bit more success and learn how to do it right, I can. All those things that if we get more, if we fix our flaws, look cuter. Lose weight, get a nose job, buy a new car, have a new relationship, or a few of them. We will be good. If I dared admit that I was still searching and struggling to find authentic happiness in a Hollywood glitz and glamour, it came off as ungrateful and spoiled. I couldn't tell if something was wrong or if I was actually ungrateful. It was confusing. At home, I looked forward to not having to be on and to just be in Jada. That didn't always happen. Though part of going home was to recalibrate and get grounded, chill, and be with loved ones. Many loved ones rightfully wanted to be Hollywood adjacent when I was in town. On one return to Baltimore, I went to see my grandmother, Shirley, and was surprised that she had planned the autograph gathering without telling me ahead of time. When I arrived, the first thing I saw was people on the porch outside and then inside, people in the living room and in the kitchen waiting to meet me. Really? What I had been looking forward to was sitting down in her kitchen and playing a game of Boggle like I did as a kid. This was no fault of Shirley's. She was proud and excited to give everyone a chance to see me. Though I begrudgingly went along, took the pictures, and signed the autographs, I wasn't happy about it. Once everyone started to leave, Shirley asked, "What's wrong with you?" "I wasn't expecting all these people here," I answered, hoping that would be the end of it. How do you come home to your grandmother's house and explain you don't want to be celebrated by her and her friends when that's all she wants to do? Even to me, that sounded ridiculous, but it was how I felt. My explanation didn't go over well. At Georgetown, where I went shopping with Chet one day, every time someone approached me and said, "You like that girl on A Different World? It's you, right?" I would politely say no, but people tell me I look like her all the time. Chet would ask, "How come you don't want nobody to know who you are?" "Because today you just kicking it with your homegirl Jada. That's why." Chet respected that and played along. No matter how much I tried to explain to others that success wasn't fixing my life the way I thought it would, that didn't seem possible or real to them. And I got that because it didn't seem possible or real to me either. After all, I was living the dream, right? I just have to do better. In the fall of 1991, I turned 21. Birthday celebrations had always been important, and Pac was there to celebrate the occasion with me. Pac's career was on fire. After years of rolling with Digital Underground, he'd established himself as a rapper in his own right. And after 2 years in the studio, he was getting ready to release his first solo album, Tupacalypse Now. I was so proud of him and happy that the world would finally get to share in the gift of his brilliance. Pac had also just starred in Juice, his film acting debut. There was a lot of Hollywood attention for his performance and for the movie, the directing debut for Ernest R. Dickerson. Pac was flying high, but even with his success, he was feeling the same void I was. Luckily, we could confide in each other. We had a lot of the same worries and stresses, but his were on a larger scale, and his life was more complicated than mine. Pac had a lot of responsibility and took care of a lot of people while trying to figure out how to take care of himself. He also had to deal with the pressures of the game or the street politics of the hip hop game and simply being a young black man in America who had notoriety. This placed a different kind of target on his back that he hadn't seen coming. None of this was playing out the way we thought it was supposed to. The saving grace was that we had each other as tethers. In the past, when I was in some money and Pac wasn't, I'd be the one looking out. And when he was in some cash and I wasn't, he looked out, like when I was in college. Now we were on parallel tracks. It was surreal, almost unimaginable, that we would be on this type of come up at the same time. As flawed as the dream was at times, sharing the rise was the most beautiful, unexpected part. We had each other while we were stumbling, too, attempting to learn how to manage an new influx of money and status that is always accompanied by higher expenses, more pressure to take on the financial responsibilities of our immediate and extended families and friends, and every other demand of being the it commodity. Nobody prepares you, especially when you are 19, 20 years old and you don't know who to trust. There were times when I felt Pac distanced me from seeing him in his new orbit. Very rarely did I spend time in his environment. This was new. If I suggested that I wanted to come see him perform, he adamantly refused. He'd show up wherever I was, no problem. But he tried to keep me from his world and all that came with it. Unexpected shit would always pop off with him that he could not always control. Looking back, I can see he wanted to keep me safe. And because of this, I never saw Pac perform live. Of course, this was meant as a temporary arrangement, but we were always looking for opportunities to collaborate creatively. That was a must for us both. Pac was the first to move us toward that dream by summoning me to be part of a video for his single Brenda's Got a Baby, based on a true story of a 12-year-old girl who gets pregnant and had to turn to the streets to survive and support her child. Then it was my turn. When I called him about playing a role on an episode of A Different World that Kadeem Hardison was directing, my character, Lena, had a homeboy from Baltimore coming to visit her at Hillman, and I knew only Pac could pull it off. Pac said yes. The in studio live audience for A Different World was always boisterous, laughing and hollering, which added so much to the energy of the show. But when Pac made his entrance, his charisma off the charts, everyone out in the seats roared. It was one of the first times I saw for myself all the love out there for him as an artist. He put in the work as usual, still in the show, and then, in the blink of an eye, he was off and running again, on to the next adventure. If my career had ended there, it would have been complete. How great that we traveled to this point together, given where we came from. But there was more. Leave it to Pac to top it with a phone call about his movie he wanted us to do together. He couldn't say enough about the project. He was really excited about that opportunity and went on to say that the young directors, twins, the Hughes brothers, were very talented. He was convinced that they were going to make a strong film, and the sentiment was that it would be rawer than Boys in the Hood. A scenario like this rarely happens in Hollywood. In those days, for an actress to make the leap from a TV sitcom to a gritty feature film was a high hurdle. There's much less of an issue with actors doing both TV and movies. Besides, I was under contract with NBC and as of then not really available. Plus, I had to audition for the movie, as I reminded Pac. Nah, he insisted. I already told the directors that you my homegirl. All they gotta do is meet you. I told them you perfect for the role. Who knew that my first Hollywood film ever would be starring next to Pac in a job he put me on? Pac made the arrangements for me to meet filmmakers Alan and Albert Hughes. When we met, we all took a liking to one another. They liked my read and the role for Ronnie, a single mom, and in a snap, it seemed like the deal was done. Not quite. Once the offer came in, I went to see Debbie Allen to tell her about the movie, and she was so happy for me that she channeled her magic into convincing the network and the producer to allow me to do the movie while shooting the last season of A Different World. Debbie wasn't going to let me miss an opportunity like this, not on her watch. Don't you worry, Bunny Rabbit. We are going to work this out. My baby is going to do her movie. As promised, Debbie got it done. Having gotten over the biggest hurdle, I was set and ready. Then, as I was upstairs in my bedroom one evening, shortly after the deal was done, Pop called me. He had gotten into an altercation with the Hughes brothers. I sat on the edge of my bed in disbelief. What the hell, Pop? What happened? Quietly, I listened as he proceeded to explain his side of the story, how he had gotten into a fight with the directors and gotten fired from the film. To this day, I still don't understand what it was about. Well, if you're not doing, I can't do it, period. The end. No, it wasn't the end. Pac wouldn't hear it. He made it very clear that he wanted me to do it regardless of his beef with the Hughes brothers. That's not going to work, Pac. This movie is good for you, Jada. You need it, and I'm telling you to do it. And now he's commanding me. In fight mode, I shot back. What? I was only doing this movie because of you. How you just? Pac cut me off. Do the movie, Square. I'll check you later. And he hung up the phone in my ear. Immobile, I continued to sit there on the edge of my bed, staring at the telephone as if it were to blame. The dream of the two of us together in my first movie was shattered. He was the only reason I wanted to do Menace to Society. I didn't even bother to call him back. He was lucky because I couldn't call Debbie Allen and say, I'm sorry. After all you did to fight for me, I don't want to do the movie now. All I could think as I lay back and looked up at the canopy was, what the fuck? When it was all said and done, I gotta give Pac props. He had what could best he had what could best be called sight, which I did not yet possess. Minister Society helped to launch my movie career in a serious, rapid fire way and even led to the Cannes Film Festival, one of the most prestigious film festivals in the world. That doesn't happen often for Black actresses from Baltimore. Just saying. That was Pac's vision, not mine. The voyage to the French Riviera in the south of France was a rite of passage. Nobody had prepped me, really, for walking the red carpet before the screening of our film. Nobody ever talked about having a stylist to help pick an outfit and dress for the international press. I knew nothing. What I thought was an artsy, daring ensemble out to be me dressed like Bozo the Clown, in pants and a long orange top with yellow and orange circles like polka dots. Not my best look. For the most part, working on the first big project with the Hughes brothers was a liberating experience. They gave me a lot of leeway to play a scene how my gut told me I should, drawn from my own experience. The movie was a huge success, critically and commercially. Being a part of it was a blessing in every respect. Pac never told me I told you so, but he probably felt good about himself for helping to start what become a domino effect. He loved being by my side at premieres and such. not because he needed more of a spotlight for himself, but because he got a kick out of seeing me shine. He would often tell me, I am so proud of you. I always knew you would do it. You've always been a star. Just don't let that head get too big, Square. I grabbed any chance to acknowledge his role in the start of my movie career, although he didn't feel he needed to be thanked. He would say more times than I could count, you looked out for me when you didn't have to. I'm always going to love you for that with all my heart. Always. He was a constant in my life. Whenever I called, he was coming, no matter what. We don't even recognize how many false gods we worship. Anonymous. Throughout my years of studying many different forms of religious practices and beliefs, I have regularly come across the idea that one should not worship false gods. For a long time, I assumed that meant false idols, or false god referred to any god or entity outside of the tradition I was studying. Slowly, I learned that worship of a false god is much deeper than that. Many of us who devote ourselves to achieving our version of happily ever after come to the stark realization that no matter how hard we strive to attain our dreams, there is a bottomless pit inside of us, a void. We're forced to confront the false belief that not only will success lead to our version of fame and fortune, but that it will cure our ills and the ills of the people we love. For me, it was easy to buy into a gold rush mindset that once I hit the jackpot, it would heal my heart, my life, my soul. Now, there's nothing wrong with having dreams and goals. It's another thing to make them the be all and end all of your existence. You're a false god. We've all heard versions of achieve by pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps, and the glory of life shall be yours. The part that goes unsaid is if you define your glory solely by winning or losing in your pursuit of goals, the part of you that craves authentic connection will be abandoned, leaving you with fleeting satisfaction and false safety. We may find ourselves chasing and clinging to false gods or tricksters who lead us away from the truth of ourselves, the truth of love, and take us off the path to authentic fulfillment. Can you identify any false gods in your life? Are you willing to let go of the belief that external attainment can sustain happiness and instead look inside to find fulfillment within your soul?